Hey, AP students, let's get started. We're going to look at our next packet, which is 3.3. This is only one packet for all of 3.3, and some of this is even going to be a little bit of review. Our first word is champa rice. Okay, yes, this is actually a pretty important word. It does come up quite a bit in the AP exam. Champa rice. This is rice that comes from Vietnam. It's fast growing, and eventually makes its way to China, where it helps increase the population because you can produce 2 crops of it a year. Leads to more irrigation, which kind of changes the soil of China. We see here a lot of terrace farming going on. And here's the big one right here. Between 600 and 1200, China's population increases from 45 million to 115 million. You'll often see this on a graph where there'll be a big spike in the population, and one of the biggest reasons for this is champa rice. So it's significant because it increases China's population, increases them to grow as a major power. Here we see our Chinampas, which again were basically where the Aztecs would take land. They would put spikes down all the way to the ground, and they did this because the Aztecs' home was on their island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. It was a way for them to get more land, and you can see the boat going around them here is where they made these basically islands of Chinampas to grow their food. They were very productive and could have a lot of food to feed the growing Aztec population. As we see here, we've seen this picture before, the Chinampas that surrounded Teotihuacan, the Aztec capital. And they were built with basically putting wood spikes all the way down, filling in the land, and then putting your crops on there to have them grow, which increased food and increased the livelihood of the Aztecs and made the Aztecs much stronger, able to take over their neighbors and become an empire in Mesoamerica. Waru is kind of like the opposite of Chinampas. They were made by the Incas in South America. So what they did then is they built basically canals for water to exist in between the crops. So they built these canals in here, and the water in the canals absorbs the sun's energy by heat and radiates it back and protects crops against the frost and allows them to grow more. And they put these platforms and they build them up so you have water, then you have the crops up above, and basically by doing this, it allows the water, again, provides obviously water for the crops, provides a little more warmth for the crops. They don't frost because the water is, when it gets the sun's energy, is warmer than the air around it. And basically what happens is they build them up and they're able to grow more. They have water there, it's warmer, and this causes a increase in the population of the Incas, allows them to grow more food along with their terrace farming, which increases the population of the Inca and allows them to store a lot of food away, thus feeding a population where it was difficult to farm up in the Andes Mountains. And here we see terracing. Terracing really goes on in 2 major places, a little more than that, but 2 major places we'll talk about are China, where in China they start doing more terrace farming, especially when they're growing their champa rice, and in the Andes where they do terracing in the mountains in combination with waru to grow more of their products like potatoes and other products that they can grow and then have all across their empire. This terrace farming allows people to grow more crops in a mountainous area and increases the population, and it's very significant especially for the Inca and China, especially during the Song dynasty in China, where they're able to see population increases and become very powerful empires, both the Song dynasty and the Incas in the post-classical era. In Europe, we see a change in agriculture, which starts to increase the food for the people, and this is basically the 3-field system. This comes with the iron plow, but a 3-field system is basically 2 fields you use to farm, and then 1 field you allow to go fallow. You allow it to go fallow. Fallow pretty much means that you don't grow anything there, and you let it rest for a season so that that field can come back later on. It helps maintain the nutrients in the soil. So instead of just farming everything, farming, you grow 2 fields, and 1 field you let go fallow, and you do that so it regains its nutrients. So in the future, you can use that field and it will grow more crops. And this stops from erosion from happening and it stops the soil from becoming depleted and not as strong. So you end up having more farm goods, farm products for a larger period of time. And this one, the three-field system, took place in Europe in the post-classical era, significant for giving more food for the people of Europe. Iron plows and a harness. A harness is what you can put on a horse. So having a combination of iron plows, which we see right here, and a harness, which you can put onto a horse, allows for several horses to be used, and an iron plow that actually digs into the soil, which lets people turn up more of the soil. And by turning up more of the soil, what happens is you can grow more crops, you can get to more of the soil, more of the what is used for production of crops, and this increases yields and increases agricultural production. This happens in China, and this also happens especially in Europe at this time, which again allows more products to be farmed and increases the population, the life expectancy of people in Europe. So that's an iron harness, and which was used with the harnesses, which were used with iron plows connected to horses to get more production out of the farm fields. All right, that was a pretty first one. We'll get to part 2 next. All right, so go ahead and flip to part 2, and we can start with the Little Ice Age. All right, the Little Ice Age, not as cute as the movie with the squirrel and the nuts, I know, or Mammoth or whoever else is in that one. I haven't seen that one in a while. Anyway, but the Little Ice Age here, we can see what happens is basically there's a time period where we can see lasts about 500 years in the post-classical era, and a little beyond that, where global temperatures start to drop. And they drop because of climate change, and there's always climate change on the planet. It's not just a recent thing. But there's climate change, which temperatures go down, and this caused a lot of decrease in production of food and agriculture, causes problems in the Song dynasty in China, into the Yang dynasty, and even in the Tang dynasty too, causes a lot of production of farming to go down in Europe, which causes a lot of problems with even starvation and decrease in the global population, and does kind of put a hold on global population and kind of keeps it from increasing, which it was doing before this. So we had a medieval warm period, which was followed by an ice age, where we see crops production goes down. Is significant because population decreases and affects places from China to Europe, among many other places in the world. Our next word is guilds. A guild is a form of labor that starts in the Middle Ages. We especially see it in Europe, although it does appear in China as well. Guilds are basically a system where if you are producing something, like let's say you're an iron worker, for example, let's say you're a shoemaker, what happens is you start off as an apprentice, which is a lower level, and you serve under a master who teaches you the craft. And in between you have a journeyman, which is someone who's able to do the work. So, for example, an apprentice, you're learning how to make shoes. You become a journeyman, you're able to have your own shop, you're able to do your work, you're no longer learning under someone, but you can do your work as a journeyman. And the master is the next level up, where you can actually teach apprentices and you can teach other people how to do their work. It's like being a master. And these medieval guilds are organized, and they are organized people who do their jobs by basically the jobs they're in, whether it's shoemaking, whether it's iron making. And it's significant because it allows people to become more experts in their field and start to specialize in some areas, which will then create more specialized labor, which leads to better products, better iron, better shoes. And it's a new form of labor that comes in the post-classical era. Footbinding. This one's kind of hard to see. Those are feet, and what happens is in China it's seen as being very valuable for women to have very small feet. It's seen as being beautiful to have small feet. So the feet are basically wrapped in cloth, and they're actually broken at first. The toes are put under to keep the feet from becoming too big, and there we see what some of the feet look like as they're put in the shoes. Footbinding is definitely a symbol of patriarchy, of male power over women. What happens is one of the reasons for it is small feet are considered beautiful because the women are considered small. They're basically considered to be a little more under control. They're still forced to do a lot of the work around the house that they would normally have to do, even some farm work. But it is seen that basically that's a sign of power, that you could have someone have these small feet that, that it's almost weirdly seen as a luxury that these women can have small feet and don't have to have a regular sized foot to have to do all the work and labor that a woman would have to do. Although ironically, many of them did have to do this work. Basically, it's a practice that is patriarchal. It makes women more subservient to the men, and is seen as beautiful in China at this time. It is seen during the Song dynasty. Definitely comes back in the Ming dynasty as well in China. And women as recently as 100 years, even less than that, 70 years, this practice was still going on in many rural areas in China to get young girls to be able to become a wife, and is seen as being more of a lady with small, petite feet. NeoConfucianism, when China becomes united under the Song dynasty again, we see here on the chart here, Confucian thinkers start to bring Buddhism, Taoism into to create a new form of Confucianism. Again, it's concerned with human behavior, respect, morality, and educating people to reach higher levels of society. It has an influence. It's a significant influence is not only China, but also Korea and Japan during this time period. It's also very patriarchal. Definitely puts males above females, as we see with practices like footbinding that happen in China at this time. So it's a significant philosophy that influences China, Korea, and Japan in the post-classical era. Now we see lots of examples of patriarchy, but Mongolian women stand out as kind of a counter to this. Mongolian women are known for going into battle. They're known for fighting. They're known for having a lot of decision-making abilities in the royal court. Mongolian women take on a lot more leadership than other women during this era, especially in places like China or in Europe. So Mongolian women are known for having more power, especially more power in decision-making, especially women like Borte, who was very important decisions that were made with Genghis Khan. Historically significant because this is a counter against a lot of the patriarchy that was going on in the post-classical era. Mongolian women also have more rights when it comes to divorce in marriages as well. Mita labor is a labor system that was used by the Incas. It is basically where the Incas were required to do work for the empire. So oftentimes the Inca would have to give much of their food to the government so everyone could be fed, but they were also made this Mita system, which basically was everyone has to work and everyone works for the Inca government. And this was used by the Inca effectively to get all the farming and to get the storage of extra food that they were able to have. Significant because it allows the Inca to work together to grow their empire, although everyone did have to do this work, whether they wanted to or not. Also, when the Spanish come, they take advantage of this, and they end up using Mita basically as a form of slavery when they come in the early modern period after the post-classical era. Peasant revolts. This era, post-classical, is known for its peasant revolts that happen with peasant labor, who basically get tired of having to do all the work on their land. Two main areas we'll be looking at a little closely are revolts that happen in both the Byzantine Empire and also happen in China. So take a look at these when they come up. This is historically significant because the peasant revolts basically show that people are able to rise up against their landlords in some cases and rise up against power. And this is a sign that the common, regular people are able to gain some power in the post-classical era in places like China and the Byzantine Empire.